Two premiership contenders upstage to blow the competition wide open. The man driving West Coast's back-to-back charge, and the power roller coaster reaches new heights. This is a round so far presented by KO and Lee Montagna. We start at Marvel Stadium tonight. The Dogs only took one quarter. They now find themselves one game outside the top 8.
Yeah, they were really impressive, Mitch. It was a real arm wrestle for 3 quarters. It was 5 goals to 6, quite low scoring. And then in the last quarter, the shackles came off the Western Bulldogs. They had to start taking the game on a little bit more. They switched the play. A really good move by Luke Beveridge, I thought, is normally the Western Bulldogs like to send a forward into the midfield and create those extra numbers. He held his 6 forwards. He played 6v6. Aaron Norton started getting some good looks one-on-one. He kicked a couple of goals. They moved with the ball. They kicked 5 goals in that last quarter. Moved with freedom. You see Bontempelli there. And I just thought it was a terrific finish. They were running all over the top of Geelong. Geelong, I know, were missing a player through injury, so they were one down in rotation. But the Western Bulldogs were running on top of the ground, and I thought they were awesome.
4 goals for Aaron Norton. Not many young forwards get hold of the Geelong defence like this.
Yeah, well, he's one of the best young key forwards in the competition. When he gets a run and launch at the footy, there's not many that can stop him, and he just got that real aura about him. He's that bit of alpha male. He wants to be the key forward, and he's a presence up there. And when they targeted him and he got one-on-ones, they were quite dangerous.
The Cats have lost 3 games this year with the contested possession count, and they're the 3 games that they've lost overall. It happened again tonight. The Western Bulldogs midfield, probably one of the more underrated midfields in the competition, and they upstage some of the bigger name Cats.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Western Bulldogs midfield stack up against any midfield week in, week out. They get the big numbers, they get the job done. It hasn't been the issue for the Bulldogs, their midfield. It's been probably more at their forward end and sometimes down the back end. But you see the numbers there. I mean, we know about Bontempelli, but I think Lockie Hunter and Jack McRae are 2 underrated players. They are elite midfielders in the competition. Dunkley, we know, is a big ball winner. And they got a hold of the much more vaunted Geelong midfield tonight and took the honours.
The Cats haven't had the big inside 50 counts this year. They just couldn't get it inside 50 tonight. And when they did, they were ineffective by 4.
Yeah, and this is the issue for Geelong. Throughout the earlier parts of the year when they were winning, it was off the back of being so efficient inside 50. Every time they went in, Ablett was hitting a target, Mitch Duncan was hitting a target, and they were kicking goals. Now teams are going to work on that. Teams are putting more effort into Geelong's forward line, how to combat them, and they're still only getting low inside 50s. And if they're not getting those same opportunities, we're seeing their scoring drying up, and other teams are now figuring out ways to beat them.
The next 3 weeks for the Dogs, Melbourne, St Kilda and Fremantle. Let's see what happens there. They could move into the top 8.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like the way they're going about it. I think even Luke Beveridge is. He's normally one that throws the magnets around and makes lots of changes. He's only made 1 change to that team in 2 weeks. So I think he's pretty happy with the settled lineup. They're playing much better footy. 3 really winnable games for the next 3 weeks. Could be 2016 all over again.
All right, over to the West Coast. 9 straight derby wins now. 91 points tonight, beating Fremantle. It's the second biggest derby win of all time. They're looking like a bit of a threat now off the back of one man, and it's Nick Naitanui, who's come back and is doing as he pleases in the midfield.
Yeah, well, he sent an ominous warning to the rest of the competition. Watch out for Nick Nat. We haven't seen him with the new 666 rules until these last couple of weeks. And, I mean, out of the centre bounce, the West Coast Eagles kicked 5 goals tonight out of the centre bounce, which is a huge number. We know about his presence. It just means that the midfield that are already such good players can now be a bit more aggressive in those stoppages. They can play with more freedom. They can be more attacking. You see there the tap from Nick Nat to Luke Shuey. When these West Coast Eagles midfielders can start getting on the fly, hitting the contests on the run, they're going to be so difficult to stop. And I do believe after seeing them the last couple of weeks that they are the premiership favourites now, particularly because some of the other teams at the top we know have got some vulnerabilities. And you've got to remember, this West Coast Eagles team have got self-belief. They won it last year. They've got a system that they know works for them and they believe in it. They've got a full injury list. They don't have any injuries except for Mark Hutchings, who will come back in a few weeks. West Coast, I think they're the team to beat.
Brad Shepherd comes back from the team that won the premiership. Andrew Gaff as well. Shepherd was the Glendenning Allen medalist tonight. So it's a pretty handy 3 inclusions when you throw Nick Naitanui in on top of that. As well, they've found another small forward. If Cripps, Rioli, Liam Ryan weren't enough. How about this man? Jared Cameron, the brother of Charlie Cameron, getting it done. 4 goals tonight in a big derby performance. Yeah,
we just speak about their midfield and how good they are. But this forward line now, how potent they are with Kennedy and Darling and young Oscar Allen, who is also a terrific player. And then at the feet, you've got these 4 smalls that are just so quick. They can apply forward pressure. They can kick goals. They've got a lot of talent. And they really work well together. They're a scary side, West Coast Eagles, particularly at home. As we said, that we know they can stand up on the big stage. Their form at the MCG is excellent. So for me, they're ticking all the boxes. And obviously they've got a rock-solid defence. So the West Coast Eagles, they are sending a warning to the rest of the competition. They are the team to beat.
And they did it tonight without Josh Kennedy out with illness. So it's handy when these guys are all standing up. They finally want Jared Cameron. pretty handy for him, and he could bob up as a premiership player in a few weeks.
Absolutely, and that's why some players, you've never got to give up on the season. You never know when your opportunity will present. There was some injuries to Rioli a few weeks ago, Petruccelli injured. All of a sudden, a young man gets his opportunity, and if you make the most of it, it's very hard to lose your spot in the side.
How hard would it be being a Port Adelaide fan right now? They beat Geelong a few weeks ago. The Dogs last week showed them up in the wet at Adelaide Oval. And tonight they turn it on in the third quarter. How about some of these efforts for the Power? Taylor Walker puts the Crows up early in the third quarter. And from there, it's an avalanche for the Power.
We didn't see this coming. I mean, the first half was really good football. It was tough. It was physical. They were getting in each other's faces. It was quite open at times, despite the scoring not being huge. And then at the start of this quarter, you thought, OK, Adelaide have come out ready to play. And from that moment on, Port Adelaide just absolutely dominated, 6-1. You see even here big Lysette, but it was a real sign. I mean, they've got bragging rights now, Port Adelaide. They are the best team in that state. They flexed their muscles. They really took it up to the Adelaide Crows. And I mean, this is the frustrating thing about Port Adelaide. They've shown what they're capable of. Yeah. They've done this in previous games. They did it against the West Coast Eagles earlier in the year. They've got so much talent and they can play such exhilarating football. The problem for them is their consistency. We know that. They just don't seem to be able to do it week in, week out and for 4 quarters.
Ollie Wines was questioned last week, 34 touches for him. And then Robbie Gray, 5th showdown medal. Where are we looking at him in terms of Port Adelaide grades?
Look, I think Robbie Gray is Port Adelaide's best ever player. I think it's always hard to put them in that category while they're still playing. It's a bit like Gary Ablett Jr., who I think is one of the three of the greatest all-time players. Robbie Gray will be Port Adelaide's greatest ever player. 3 best and fairest, 4 All-Australians, and as you said, 5 showdown medals, which is the biggest game for them in a home and away season. He steps up on the big stage. I know Port Adelaide have had some wonderful players over their time, but I think Robbie Gray will be number 1 when he retires.
Treaders might be a bit flat with that. He was one of the catalysts, Robbie Gray, in the second half. Have a look at some of these numbers, Joey. Talk us through these, and the one that stands out for me, they were getting their hand on the footy more, but the tackles, they were plus 10 over the Crows.
Yeah, it was an obliteration, really, and I probably thought the Crows didn't respond, which was disappointing. I mean, we sort of thought almost that the Crows had played some really good footy over the last 6 or 7 weeks, but when the challenge was met and when Port Adelaide dished it up to them, they didn't have a response. And that was a concern for me, that they just didn't have any fight. They couldn't have any answers. There's been some questions about, what has Don Pike got up his sleeve if things aren't going their way. And Adelaide just couldn't handle Port Adelaide's pressure, and it was a domination after half-time. Don
Pike's usually pretty measured post-game, but he came out and was forced to apologise to the Crows fans post-match.
It was just nowhere near the level that is acceptable, and I want to apologise to our members and fans who turned up to watch, because that was nowhere near good enough from all of us. We were badly beaten.
Going forward now for the Crows, what do they need to identify? Because as you said, that third quarter, they let the Power run away with it. Is that a concern? Are other clubs now going to start looking at that as a way to unfold the Crows?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, because Adelaide have actually been so strong defensively. That's been their key this year, is that they've been rock solid behind the ball. They're just struggling to score, and I think that's still an issue. I think Tom Lynch for them is one of the most underrated players in the competition. He's so important to them as that link man. They tried Wayne Miller up forward, which I liked, because I think sometimes Adelaide, I know they've got some good players up there, but they maybe lack a bit of leg speed in the front half at times. So I liked Miller there, but Adelaide just got to find more avenues to goal if things aren't going their way, because they defend relatively strongly, although it fell apart in the second half this week. I've still got faith they'll play finals, but they need to bounce back pretty quick off that defeat. All
right, to the MCG now, the Bombers and the Swans. This game was on a knife's edge for most of it. The Bombers blew it open late, and it looked like from the back half they were getting that run with Sard and McKenna, but also their midfielders, Parrish, McGrath, got their hands on the footing and started playing with a bit more instinct. Yeah, we spoke about the Western Bulldogs really playing with a bit more freedom in the last quarter, and again, that was Essendon's case today. I think it's the second time in 2 weeks where Essendon at times, they look a bit stifled with their ball movement, and when they just have nothing to lose and have to try and win the game like they did today, they play much better football. I think you look at the talent on their list, and they've got guys that need to play some free-flowing football. You talk about Parrish and Shield, obviously McKenna and Sard, but even their forwards, I mean, Fantasia, Tip and Woody and Stringer, they're some of the most sort of instinctive players in the competition. And when they could just go out and just in that last quarter try and win it, they really turned it on, and I was really impressed with how they dug deep and got the win. This is as good a highlights reel as you'll see for one player in an individual game. Jake Stringer almost didn't play this game. He said the leg injury was almost going to keep him out for a third week. He pushed through it and delivered a few crucial goals. Yeah, and this has been the knock, hasn't it, on Jake Stringer, his defensive work. We know what he's capable of doing with the foot in his hand, and he can pull out the mercurial goal, but to see him do that for Essendon when they need him and stand up at big moments in the last quarter, I thought was a terrific effort from Jake Stringer. He's going to be really important, and Essendon are now knocking on the door of the top 8 as well, which is remarkable considering all the talk about John Worsfold and where this list was at. But they've got plenty to play for, they've got plenty to prove, and I think they've got plenty to prove for themselves that
they're a better team than what they've shown over a couple of years now. And if Jake Stringer can keep leading from the front with his effort, more so than what he does with his goals, we always see him kick great goals. But if he continues to lead with his effort, it's going to help their forward line, no doubt.
They're even on 7 and 8 now, 7 and 8 spot now with wins, so that's exciting. And also, John Worsfold's got one up his sleeve with Cale Hooker. So he was thrown forward late in the final term. It's one up his sleeve like he did with Adam Hunter back in the days.
Yeah, absolutely. And we saw last week Cale Hooker kicking the winning goal, and they did it again this week. And even though Cale Hooker didn't have much of an influence, what it does is it changes the structure of the opposition's backline. All of a sudden, Jake Stringer got the next best defender, so he was able to get off the chain. Cale Hooker gives them something to kick to go a bit more direct, and they can go forward. And while Hooker didn't have the numbers, it was still an influential move from John Worsfold.
Talking about getting off the chain, the Tigers went up to Gold Coast today. 7.7% they've gained. They were always struggling this year to try and get that percentage and contend with the top teams. They've gained 7.7%. And blew the Suns off the park.
Yeah, well, that's the only way you can describe the first half from Richmond. They just blew them out of the water. The Gold Coast had no answers. And what I love about Richmond, when they're at their best, like they were today, the movement in their front half. They've got so many dynamic small forwards and so many players that are explosive. We see Castagna there, and Lambert was pushing forward. And they're so hard to stop. They're Sydney Stack and the other guys that are in there. And they just were picking them apart today. It was too easy for Richmond. And Gold Coast really... when it got too difficult for them, unfortunately, it goes from bad to worse.
Some of these highlights aren't great. Jack Martin turning one over there, Kane Lambert, and then easy enough to kick it inboard to Shea Bolton. How about this one? Brendan Ellis gets a 50-metre penalty in the back half. He waltzes in. Look at the clock here, 27 seconds left before half-time. He's allowed to go unimpeded in there and kick the Tigers into 100 points before half-time.
Yeah, I mean, Stewie Jew, to his credit, I mean, they've been on a losing streak, but their effort's been really good for most of the season. I mean, they've had quarters here and there where they've been blown out, but really overall they've been really strong. So Stewie Jew will be so disappointed that they basically, threw up the white flag today and said it was all too hard. Although they did dig in the second half, which you've got to give them a little bit of credit for that. But that's really disappointing. They haven't been that bad this year, and tough times for them.
Stewie Jew, so they won't brush over this one. We'll see how the review goes for the Suns. Now, Joey, time to catch up on all things social media. And Mel Horsey, an iconic footy moment was immortalised today in Perth.
It was indeed. A statue of the moment Nicky Winmar took a stand against racism was unveiled outside Optus Stadium today. Now, there were hundreds of people there for the ceremony, boys, including Gilbert McAdam, who was in tears, as was Nicky. It was a very emotional ceremony and an incredible statue, and I love this photo as well. How good's that? Awesome,
and he's a legend of the St Kilda Footy Club and is a current Saint, also enjoying a milestone this weekend.
There is indeed. Jack Billings, he's set to play his 100th game this week, and his teammate and former schoolmate, I might add, Jack Sinclair, posted this little tribute on Instagram. Congrats on 100 games. Bring back the blonde tips. Now, Joey, you know him better than any of us. Well, Jack Billings.
That's what Jack looked like when he got drafted, I thought. I'd still remember him as just the young kid that came to the footy club and with all the talent. Now he's played 100 games already. Gee, it goes quick, and he's one of the leaders of that club now, so he's got a really important role to play going forward. But I should send him a text in as well, so congratulations.
A reminder,
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Now, I saw something bob up on social media this weekend. Players have way too much time on their hands, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, it was Shane Mumford's birthday during the week, and Matt DeBoer's post to say happy birthday really caught my eye. Have a listen to how quick Shane Mumford can say the alphabet backwards.
ZYXWVUTSRQPONMLKJIHGFEDCBO.
Mind blown. I can't do it. All right, boys, your turn. Go, Joey. Can you do it?
No, not A.
Can you do it? Go.
No, ZYXV. No, I can't.
Wrong.
That's very aggressive.
VUTSRQPONMLK. That's just
okay. That's pretty good. That's better than I could have ever done. Hey, boys, before I let you go, obviously a notable absence tonight. Kane Corns is busy with running things, so we've got Joey in the chair, but he hasn't missed an opportunity to have a little dig at Tex Walker.
Oh, not again.
I know, boys. Have a look at what he changed his profile picture to. This is real. We didn't make this up. Kane's changed his profile picture to this after today's showdown. Tom Cleary obviously played most of the match on Tex Walker and kept him pretty quiet. So, boys, a subtle little dig there. He can't help himself.
He can't help.
All the Crows fans need to go and press that add friend button and let him have it.
Oh, dear.
All right, we're back next week to explain himself. Back to Friday night. The Hawks and the Pies. Alistair Clarkson, 10-1 now over Nathan Buckley, and the Hawks did it in the last quarter. Looks like the Pies' forward line starting to break down a little bit. Mason Cox has been quiet. Brodie Mychek ever since Jaden Stevenson went down.
Yeah, it's difficult to try and work out just one part of where Collingwood's game has fallen down, but this has been coming for a while, I think. If you look at not only just their last 4 weeks, but even going further back, they've been off the boil a little bit, and I think their forward line at the moment is a little bit dysfunctional. I think that obviously Mason Cox is horribly out of form. All of a sudden, Brodie Mychek, who's had a pretty quiet month, he's only kicked 5 goals in the last 6 weeks.
Yep.
He becomes so much more important. No doubt they're missing Jaden Stevenson. And while Jordan De Goey is still clearly their best forward, he sort of doesn't have enough impact for a full game. He's only kicked more than 3 goals once in this season. And while he always does a couple of terrific things and has influence, he's sort of not, putting everyone on his shoulders and saying, come on, follow me. Jamie Elliott, we know he's obviously had his issues as well. So just at the moment, Collingwood's forward line's dysfunctional. They can't get enough run through the midfield and give their forwards a chance, and they've got plenty of issues, the Pies.
Massive 3 weeks for the Pies. As for the Hawks, they might have found one. Mitch Lewis only played a handful of games or so this season. Has been in and out. He really stood up and took this game by the scruff of the neck late. Yeah,
absolutely. He's shown Hawks fans what they've got for the future and why Ruffy's playing some VFL football, because they've got to get games into Mitch Lewis. To see some of the highlights that he put together Friday night, the talent is clearly there. He's got the size and the athleticism. Look at this move for a big fella that's nearly 200 centimetres to step inside, steal side bottom and kick one on his left. He can take a big mark. Now, you've just got to curtail your expectations because we spoke about a young Sam Wiedemann, didn't we, when we saw some footy from him for Melbourne in a final against Geelong. He hasn't quite delivered yet. It's very hard for young key forwards to put together, a consistent body of work early, but they will get there. So I want to see Mitch Lewis continue to play footy, but Hawthorn fans should be excited about what they've got.
We all think they're getting John Patton. Do they still get him now with what we've seen with Mitch Lewis?
I think you still take John Patton if he's available. It's not going to cost them a lot, and I think he's worth having on that list, depending on how his knee is. But I'm a bit more bullish on the Hawks than a lot of other people. I actually think if you look at their list, they can bounce pretty quick, and I think they could almost challenge for the 8 next year.
Okay.
You take into consideration how good of a coach Clarko is, but when you talk about Sicily, Hardwick and Impey in the back line that are all still young, I mean, they're missing their Brownlow medalist and best player in Tom Mitchell. Jager O'Meara, Shields, Isaac Smith and Henderson are still young enough to play good footy. Gunston, Bruce and Wingard are 3 really good players that are still young enough and all Australians. So I think don't worry about the Hawks. I think they've still got plenty of good footy left in them.
And we're still waiting on an answer from Stephen Canilio, so we're very keen to see what happens there. Now, Joey, don't forget, you can catch KO. KO lets you stream over 50 sports live and free, including every match of every round of the Toyota AFL Premiership season. You can stream all of the Sunday matches with Carlton taking on Melbourne, North Melbourne up against St Kilda, and the GWS Giants against Brisbane. You can also watch any match of this week's matches on demand with KO's Key Moments feature, making sure you don't miss a goal. Plus, enjoy all the Cricket World Cup live and ad break free during play. You can also stream the action from Wimbledon this week. Search KO Sports to start your 14-day free trial now. Now, some of those matches for tomorrow. Some intriguing fixtures. Carlton and Melbourne to kick things off at the MCG. No Patrick Cripps, that's going to be a big one. Also North Melbourne and the Saints. Dan Hanbury misses for the Saints. He's being managed after 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's okay, and that's not surprising. When you've been out for so long, sometimes when you play 1 or 2 games back, you do pull up sore. You're not used to that work. He's there for the long term, so there's no need to rush him if he's not right. He'll still play some footy at the back end of the year.
And the Giants and Lions fighting for spot in the top 4. We have a look at the ladder now. This is shaping up as a pretty fascinating end of the season. Geelong blew the chance tonight to move 2 games clear of Collingwood. West Coast now only a game behind, but it's shaping up in that middle rung as a massive logjam. How many clubs here do you think can challenge for the premiership?
Well, if North Melbourne beats St Kilda tomorrow, there's going to be 12 teams that are going to be within 1 game or 12 teams that can still play finals. So it's a fascinating ladder. We thought, just when we thought we knew what was going on and who were the top teams and who weren't, these bottom teams are continuing to improve, and that's what you've got to understand with the season of footy. It's so hard to stay at the top, and teams that have been struggling are now finding their best football. So I think the final 6 or 7 weeks are going to be very entertaining to see what happens with that ladder.
Now, you barged in here tonight for your round so far debut and demanded some vision of your good mate Jared Ruffhead. We go to one more thing. Let's have a look at Ruffy playing in the VFL. He's still got a few hops, the old fella.
Yeah, the old boy's still got some hops left in him. He might have seen Mitch Lewis play on Friday night and thought, hang on, don't forget me, especially if the Hawks just, potentially make a little charge for the finals. As we said, we don't know what's going to happen yet with the season. So good to see Ruffy still taking hangers, even though it is at VFL level.
Thanks for that, Joey. Sharp debut.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Mel Horsey.
Thank you. And hey, we should say good luck to Kane Corns in his marathon tomorrow.
You'll see it all on social media unfold. Thanks for that. We'll see you same time, same place here on the Round So Far next week.